Hello, bonjour, bojo, ani, sego, sekoli, kwe, and if I've missed saying hello in another language, I apologize. It is wonderful to be here with you, gathering on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and I want to thank everyone at the Assembly of First Nations for inviting me here to join you. I know that this is a very important discussion that you are having, and it's an honor to be here to take part in it with you. And I'm pleased to be joined here with you by my Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, David Zimmer, who is here with us today, and to all of you from other parts of the country. Welcome. It's a pleasure. My ongoing relationship with First Nations communities is something that is of great importance to me on a personal and at a political level. And since we were sworn into office, this new government, almost a year ago, advancing and improving this relationship is one of the priorities that has guided me in everything that I do. And I want you to know that. Some of you that I know that this is a priority for me, but I want everyone in this room to know that it is very much a top priority for us. From our budget to our cabinet discussions to the communities that I visit and the plans that I make, the interests of this relationship and First Nations Aboriginal communities are top of my mind. And I'm very grateful to the AFN for the work that it does to advance the discussion, to advance the relationships in the country. You're an invaluable partner for Ontario as we work to improve quality of life for Aboriginal communities across this province. And I want to just say that from my perspective, this is a particular partnership. It's a particular relationship that being between peoples who have each their own vision of the future, and those visions needing to come together to be shared, to be modified, and to continue to evolve. So I see this as a primary relationship in which we're involved. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge the creative partnership that the AFN has formed with Habitat for Humanity and National Chief Atleo's participation as a member of that group's leadership council. We're talking about infrastructure, and I think those kinds of partnerships are critical. Last September, I saw a photo of National Chief Atleo and his staff with hammers in hand and hard hats volunteering their time to build a home in Northern Ontario for an Ojibwa Cree woman and her 3 grandchildren. And so it's that kind of involvement and that kind of compassion that drives AFN. So I applaud your effort and your continued good works. I want to take a moment to welcome, as I said, all of the out-of-province delegates to our beautiful Ontario. I know we have regional chiefs here from Manitoba, the Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and I want to thank you for making the trip. Someone said maybe next year it will be in British Columbia and we can go where it's warmer. But thank you for coming to share your invaluable perspective as we discuss First Nations infrastructure. The issue of infrastructure is an important focus of mine, but I know that it's an issue across the country, and in fact, infrastructure is one of the things that concerns that I raised in my role as the chair of the Council of the Federation of Canada's Premiers, that having a national infrastructure strategy is extremely important to all regions of the province, and so a discussion of First Nations infrastructure for me falls into that category of this being something that we need to be talking about in every corner of the province. It's something that I've thought about throughout my political career. We focused on building schools when I was Minister of Education, as we talked about connecting communities in the Ministry of Transportation, and certainly there are people in this room with whom I've had discussions about how we work together as we build infrastructure like roads. And then in my role as Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and of course as Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. So it doesn't matter which ministry I was in, the issues of infrastructure were of primary importance. Because I believe that infrastructure is the foundation of a strong, prosperous community. And it's often the case that infrastructure is is put off for another day. Maintenance of building of new infrastructure is put off because it's difficult, it's time consuming in the interest of more immediate needs. But that kind of thinking does not allow for the good upkeep and really the modernization of infrastructure. And so that kind of continuous ongoing building is very, I think it's very important to the whole discussion of infrastructure. But infrastructure is also a vital part of how we take care of one another. It's the support that we offer our children, our parents, our neighbors, and our friends. And it's how we'll remain globally competitive as a province. And it's how we will increase our position as a globally competitive jurisdiction if we can make sure that every part of Ontario can prosper and thrive. And part of that is making sure there's excellent infrastructure everywhere. Just last week, U.S. President Barack Obama talked about this topic in his State of the Union address. He said, in today's global economy, first-class jobs gravitate to first-class infrastructure. And I think we know that intuitively. And so I believe that it's especially relevant to our Aboriginal communities. In Ontario, it is my goal to make sure that everyone is set up for success, no matter where you live in Ontario, that you're set up to be successful. So whether you're in Oswego or in Ottawa, I want to make sure that everyone in this province has the same support and the same opportunities. And when I talk in my remarks many times about One Ontario, that's what I mean, that we should have policies. They may not look exactly the same in every part of the province, but we have to create a province where there is equitable access to the kinds of supports that we know are necessary for economic vitality. And so when I talk about improving infrastructure, I'm not just talking about roads and bridges, because that is, roads and bridges are of concern in many parts of the province, of course, but I'm talking also about energy infrastructure to connect remote First Nations communities to the grid and to help foster economic growth. For some of the people in this room, that energy connectivity is the most important infrastructure subject. I'm talking about hospitals and health centers to make sure that people can have access to the services that will keep them healthy or will make them healthy. I'm talking about schools and libraries and giving children the best start in life. And those are the things that are vital to our communities, and all of those, for me, fall into the discussion of infrastructure. So that's why we're going to continue to work closely with you as we invest in strategic infrastructure needs across the province. We're already working on this front, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing. Right now, in Ontario, Aboriginal communities play a central role in our long-term energy plan. And a core component of that energy policy is to support and encourage the participation of Aboriginal communities in the energy sector. Right now, for example, we're working toward connecting up to 21 remote First Nations communities to the grid. And that will have a tremendous impact on quality of life. And, you know, it's something that many of you in this room have talked to me about for a number of years, and it is front and center in our long-term energy plan. But it's also part of our plan to make power cleaner and more reliable so that we can spur that economic development and growth that we know is so needed in all of those regions. So it's very important to me that we work on these projects together. It's why we recently implemented the Aboriginal Community Energy Plan, which is a program to help communities to develop their own comprehensive plans for the future, and in that way improve energy efficiency. Also reduce electricity consumption and explore green energy opportunities. I believe very strongly that having communities develop and work with other government, other partners, work together, that is the way the best policies are developed. That's the way the best infrastructure is built, rather than a decision being made at a distance from a community and being imposed. So I think that partnership is critical. Later this month, we'll also roll out a brand new Aboriginal Transmission Fund, and what this fund will do is help First Nation and Métis communities explore potential partnerships in new transmission projects in Ontario. So that will allow them then to make the right business decisions and determine which partnerships will bring lasting benefits to their communities. Again, allowing communities to make those decisions and have some options. So that kind of partnership, as I say, between government, private industry, and First Nations communities is, I think, what will help us to have a strong and growing economy going forward. So we'll continue to work to support this work and Aboriginal-led renewable energy projects like Henvey Inlet's Ngig Power Project. And I think that's a great example of how communities are embracing green energy here in the province, and we'll do our part to make sure that there are more such successful projects and help them to get off the ground. I know sometimes that these things take longer than we might want, and I understand that working with government can sometimes be cumbersome, but I do believe that if we persevere and if our relationships are strong enough to be able to get through those time frames, then we end up with the best solutions. But as I said earlier, I know that infrastructure is not just about one power project. It's not just about one single initiative. To address our infrastructure deficit in Ontario and in relation to First Nations in particular, we have to look at all of the individual support systems that can help communities to thrive. There's not just one thread here. So we're going to bolster our energy infrastructure, but we're also going to improve roads and transportation systems, working closely with Aboriginal communities as we move forward on projects like the widening of Highway 69 between Sudbury and Parry Sound. It was interesting to me when I was Minister of Transportation that it was very important on many of these projects that we increase our engagement with First Nations communities and make sure that we had good lines of communication as we tried to widen or find new corridors for roads. So we will continue to do that. And we're going to invest in improved healthcare systems and education, at the same time addressing unique needs of communities. We've already had some success in this area, like the birth centre that's staffed by Aboriginal midwives at Six Nations of the Grand River, the 4 on-reserve long-term care homes across the province, and I know that the Minister of Health is very optimistic about the Aboriginal community health centres in Toronto and Timmins, and so we need to look to those models, see what's working, see what's not working, and see what we can learn from them so that we can replicate the successes in other communities working in partnership with the local leadership. And education, as many of you know, is an issue that's truly close to my heart. I believe that providing our children with a strong education is the best thing that we can do. It's in fact the fundamental of helping children to live their dreams and be able to realize their potential. And so I am committed to improving educational opportunities for Aboriginal children across this province. And our Aboriginal education strategy is designed to do just that. We want to help Aboriginal students succeed, and that is whether they're living in remote or in urban areas. And in order to do that, we have to increase the knowledge and the awareness of all students about Aboriginal histories, cultures, and perspectives. I actually believe that probably the single most important thing we could do in terms of fostering and improving the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people is to find ways to tell our collective story differently. And the most important place to do that, I believe, is in all of our schools. And so I am responsible as the Premier for 5,000 publicly funded schools in Ontario, and that does not include the schools on First Nations reserves. But in those 5,000 public schools, there are many, many Aboriginal children. There are many, many children who have either grown up in an urban centre or who have come from a remote community to the school. But it's not just those children who need to have a different curriculum and a story told differently about our history. It's all of the children in our schools. And so it's a personal priority of mine that we find a way to do that. So our Aboriginal education strategy is designed to do that. We want to increase that knowledge and awareness among all students. We're also working with the federal government and with individual First Nation partners to improve relationships between our provincially funded schools and schools on reserve. I think that although Aboriginal schools may fall under federal jurisdiction, if we're going to ensure that everyone has equal access to a great education, it's not an issue that we can simply, as a provincial government, say, that's somebody else's responsibility. I'm not willing to do that. We have to work together in partnership to make sure that all of the needs are addressed. So that actually brings me, because this is one of the areas that is of real contentious discussion, and it brings me to the final issue that I'd like to raise, and that's our partnership when it comes to communicating with the federal government. As that level of government actually steps back from its responsibilities, I really believe that the provinces have to shine a light on those areas and then step forward at the same time. We have to make it clear where the areas of responsibility are, and at the same time take responsibility for what we know is necessary investment and necessary partnership in the short term. We have to work together to advocate for our common goals. We have to work together to advocate for our shared priorities and our overlapping needs. This is a role that I see for myself, and I want to use my voice to help to advocate for those needs. We're committed to continuing to foster a strong and respectful relationship with our partners, so I'm going to continue to push the federal government and support the AFN's call, for example, for additional federal funding, for more schools, for better schools. I think that all of our voices together need to be pushing for that. I support your efforts to expand federal funding for First Nations housing across Canada and to improve your water and wastewater systems. And again, we are willing to partner on those issues, but we need also to push our other partner. I echo your belief that the federal government has to do more to protect First Nations girls and women and work with you to protect them from violence and victimization. And it's also time for the Government of Canada to take another look at its fiscal relationship with First Nations. And to that point, again, to say that we are willing to step up and do what is necessary. We are having that discussion here in Ontario about resource revenue sharing and how we can have a better financial and fiscal relationship with Aboriginal people. So I support your work to address these inequalities, and at the same time, we are working to address them here in Ontario. So the support and treatment and transfers that you receive from Ottawa shouldn't be inflexible or conditional or inadequate, and I will continue to do my best to work with you to raise those issues at the same time addressing them here in Ontario. If we believe, as I do, that we are all treaty people, then we must treat each other with all the respect and mutuality that implies, and that extends to the federal government. So I look forward to our work together. I know that if our province is going to continue to prosper and to grow, we need to build a foundation of equity and fairness and opportunity for everyone. And that's why I believe so strongly in making smart, long-term infrastructure investments across Ontario. And First Nations communities remain a fundamental element of that process. So, thank you very much for being here today. I know you're going to share ideas from your various jurisdictions of things that are happening that are successful, that we can learn from, and this is a terrific opportunity, and I encourage everyone from Ontario to take those ideas from other provinces, work with Minister Zimmer and with me to make sure that we can find ways to move processes along more quickly, to make sure that we facilitate the development of economic plans and infrastructure plans from communities, and then find ways to work better in partnership with each other. Thank you very, very much for having me. Merci, miigwech.